Well, we have one very important thing to do today. It's first Monday, our first Sunday of the month. We'd like to know if you have a birthday this month, the month of August. Anybody have a birthday? Please stand. One back here. Oh, good. Anybody else? Oh, Kim. Okay, great. So we've got two great birthdays. So join me in singing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, wonderful people. Happy birthday to you. Great, great. Good morning. Good morning. Well, you know, many of our congregants are at Coram Ranch on a wonderful congregational retreat. And you know, yesterday I was walking as I do around the wetlands, and I got rained on the whole way. And it felt so good, and I thought, oh, they're at retreat, they're gonna have a blast with the rain. So that was fun to see, fun to experience, especially in August. Well, the topic of today's talk is compassion in action. Now, when I told Paul that, he went, okay. So I thought, okay, there's more to compassion in action than meets the eye, because we know we are compassion in action. And Ernest Holmes taught that compassion is really spirituality in motion. It's our understanding of spirituality, of who we are in the world as spiritual beings. And when we take compassionate action, it has a rippling effect throughout the community, far beyond what we ever really know. The energy behind compassion in action always leads to love, and that's a guarantee. So when we do something kind to other people, when we feel compassion for their situation, whatever words we say, whether it's a look or a smile, we know that it turns into love at some point. So it also looks like we can show compassion through eye contact. If you've ever been in a hospital and you see the people suffering and you just contact them with your eyes and maybe give a smile. And then sometimes when life is very intense, it's good to have a good laugh. And sometimes laughter can break that tension and feel very lighthearted. And the most important part of compassion in action to me is being fully present. Fully present with whatever's going on. Because in that way we can have empathy for the situation at hand. We don't have to fix the situation at hand. We just are there fully present. And sometimes that's the greatest gift we can give people. You know, it's been interesting the last few weeks here at the center. We've had more people coming in going, somebody told me I needed to come here and I don't know why. Somebody told me that I'd find something here that would help me. Somebody told me that you would hear what my issue is, and I don't know what you can do. And this week we had the most astounding visit by two gentlemen who left Virginia and drove across country to Redding for something that turned out to be a scam. They had all their belongings in this Penske rent-a-truck, and they got to Redding, and they could not find this person who promised them so much. And so one of them had been a member of a center in Southern California, and he walked in and he gave us his membership card and he said, I'm part of your organization. And we said, well, come in and sit down. How can we help? What's going on? And so we talked for a long time. And boy, talk about compassion for somebody that drives cross country with all their belongings for something that wasn't going to pan out. In the end, I had them follow me to the mission, and they stayed there a couple nights just to kind of get their bearings. But they came back and they said, well, now we would like some help with this and that, and we spent quite a bit of time together. So if you see a Penske truck in the parking lot this week, you'll know the guys are back, and we're doing what we can to help them. But what an incredible experience in the office. And we've had therapists. Two people came in this week and they said, my therapist said I should come here. What do you do here? What do you believe here? And so we would show them around. So it feels like we're not still the best kept secret in town. That's what we hope is moving and helping people. Because we don't have money to give people. We don't have space where we can say, come on in and sleep here It's not appropriate for our insurance company. But we do a lot of things. We support People of Progress, which is emergency assistance. We not only provide food for them, in fact, the new leader of People of Progress called me this week and she said, we are so grateful because now they're weighing all the food that we bring in. This week we brought in 385 pounds of food. Now that's amazing. She was in awe and extremely grateful. So we also give them clothing, we give them personal items that people drop off, and we also contribute to the HIV Food Bank, which helps people with HIV in 3 counties. We are also one of the many churches that provides warm food for the homeless at the Hope Van, where it sets up in different areas of the city. Our turn is only once a month because there's a lot of churches that are doing it, but that's a wonderful thing to do. And we collect shoes for the homeless, Shoes for Souls. It's my favorite program. And we distribute those through Living Hope Ministry, which is a great aid to the homeless and to the very, very poor. So what we call this type of compassion and action here at our center is seva. It's a Sanskrit word. It means being in service to God. And we emphasize it's service to God. It's not rushing around, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. It is done at the pace of love. It is done in love. Because when we know that we touch any item, any can of food, anything that we do, we want love to go with it. And so that's what we offer in our seva program. We have a nice brochure that I thought I brought up here. Here it is, Seva, the Gift of Service. We have 17 different seva teams, and they're all listed here. So if you aren't on one, please consider, because these are great ways to nourish your soul, to expand your spiritual awareness, and to meet people and enjoy their company. It's proven that when we do anything with a loving attitude, it helps our body, it helps our mind, and it helps our soul. And you know what Gandhi said, let your life be your message. And so that's a beautiful way to think of seva. Let your life of love be your message. Well, when I saw the topic of this talk, I went immediately to my bookshelf and pulled out a wonderful book by Ram Dass called Compassion in Action, Setting Out on the Path of Service. I love this book because, well, you'll find out why. It was written by Ram Dass and Mirabai Bush. And in the first chapter, Ram Dass, I dearly love this man. He says, compassion is a paradox. It's accepting that everything is happening exactly as it should be, and we want to change it all. It means we set goals, but we really know it's the process that's important. It's believing in being joyful in the midst of suffering, but hopeful in overwhelming odds. It's seeing simplicity in the world of complexion and confusion. Isn't that, it's just the great paradox. And compassion intends to eliminate suffering while we recognize suffering is endless. What a paradox. So he said, in the end, it's important to just know that this world is a sacred place. Earth is a sacred place, and to tread on it lightly. Now, for compassion, what he means lightly is do everything gently. Don't become depressed or angry about anything because you contribute to the problem and not the solution. And we don't overload ourselves so much that we can't be in service and love. And to always trust the universe is operating exactly as it should be. And that trust is fairly challenging for a lot of people. Well, in the book, as well as his other book that I have out in the bookstore, Journey of Awakening, his Journey of Awakening, powerful book. In the 60s, he started to get concerned about social issues, but he would go to rally after rally, and people would be saying, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, we've got to do something and do it now. And he's like, well, wait a minute, where's oneness in all that? Where's love in all of that? And he often wondered where oneness came in the equation because so many groups would forget And Martin Luther King at the time, he kept saying, love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. And how often that got drowned out. So this book by Ram Dass and Mirabai Bush is also about a very, very special project. In 1978, the two of them were invited to a special meeting. And the reason was they were devotees of Neem Karoli Baba in India, also known as Maharaji. The stated purpose of the meeting was to start a nonprofit organization dedicated to the alleviation of suffering in the world. Ooh, big, big topic. The leaders that called this meeting had been leaders in a UN organization to eradicate smallpox, and they were highly successful with that. But now they were ready for another project. So they thought, who better to invite to the meeting than devotees of Maharaji? And so this meeting was held in Michigan. In the years that Ram Dass studied with Maharaji, one thing he kept hearing over and over and over again is do everything as service to God. Everything. So in that respect, he had embraced that when he came back to the U.S., and so he was looking forward to this meeting of Maharaji devotees, all instructed for years, do everything in service to God. Well, for Mirabai, she didn't know very much about these people. She knew that she was a Maharaji devotee, but she didn't know the people who were organizing this, and she kind of felt out of place because at the first meeting she walked into, it was a very mixed collection of people. She said there were some in suits and some in sweatsuits. And one man named Wavy Gravy had a Day-Glo beanie on his hat with a propeller. And so it was this real eclectic group. And you know how the things happen at the right and perfect time. When the meeting started, it started snowing, and they got snowed in for 4 days. They couldn't leave. And everyone's level of reactivity to everybody else, wait a minute, I'm in a three-piece suit and you're in sweats. It took that many days for them to just settle down and get to appreciate one another. So that was a real miracle, wasn't it? So they discussed lots of ideas to alleviate suffering around the world. And what they came upon, and it's so huge, I can't even imagine sitting there going, okay, we're going to do this. Eradicate preventable and curable blindness. Huge. Eradicate blindness in the world. Wow. At that time, 80% of the blindness in the world was preventable and curable. And over 20 million people in the world were experiencing blindness. That's huge. So they agreed to name the new organization SEVA. How perfect. Selfless service to God. So the first thing they did was a big survey of the world. Where are the most blind people? Turned out to be Nepal, the poorest country in the world. They had a backlog of 200,000 cases where people were blinded by cataracts. And 25,000 people were added to that roll every year. Huge problem. And so that's what they decided to do. We're going to go to Nepal and we're going to start helping eradicate blindness. Well, Mirabai found her niche in this whole organization is in fundraising. So she wrote articles that were published by the World Health Organization. And money started rolling in. And it's not important to you or me, but I thought this was really cute. The first person to donate $5,000 was Steve Jobs. This is before he was even known. But he too had studied with Maharaji. And he felt so compelled he wanted to give. And he participated in many of the meetings. And in fact, in his biography, it begins with his participation in one of the meetings where he writes, I was with spiritual leader Ram Dass, public health hero Dr. Larry Brilliant, counterculture icon Wavy Gravy, the guy with the beanie, and Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead. Now, what an interesting group. He said there were Hindus, Buddhists, rockers, and doctors. And I thought, wouldn't that be an amazing experience? 5 years later, Mirabai wrote that she got really discouraged Because what happened is each person came up with their own self-imposed deadlines. You know how that is. I'm in a group and we're going to go this way and I'm going to take this piece and here's how I'm going to get it done. But they were all going in their own directions. They weren't coming together and working on this together. And so quite often she would come to a meeting and she says, I'm done, I'm resigning. We are not working together in compassion and action. And so that would take the whole group down to a depressed level. And they would spend hours examining what in the heck each one of them were doing and why they weren't working together better. So during that time, it was funny because Wavy Gravy started coming to all the meetings with Groucho Marx glasses. And if anyone said the word serious, you had to wear the glasses because you should not take yourself so serious. So he kept a sense of levity in these meetings. Finally, the group became so cohesive, the next time Mirabai said, I'm done, I'm resigning, they said, okay. So she stayed. So as they moved forward, what became really clear, and it's clear here in the center too, that the success of any program is dependent on individual spiritual development of each person on the team. Individual spiritual development. Yes, group development, but what creates success is your individual spiritual path, your development on the spiritual path. So eventually these control issues turned into trust of the group. And you know, the Buddha said, if your compassion doesn't include yourself, it's incomplete. And that's so true. It needs to include you, no matter what you're doing as service. So being part of a Seva team does support your individual spiritual development. And when you can get to the point of trusting in the universe, then all of a sudden your personal evolution unfolds with grace and ease. So Mirabai wrote, at the end of 8 years, they'd made a lot of headway, but they had not caught up on the 200,000 cases. And so more deep examination was done. And they realized they had to let go of their 1960s quick fix mentality. You know, everything in the world can be fixed. Freedom, love, we'll just fix it. They had to let go of that. And they had to embrace, be here now. Be here now. Just be with where it is now. That is so important for every one of us. Now, after 12 years, the backlog in Nepal was still reduced, but what they had, it was a very strong infrastructure. And we're going to fast forward to 2016. I pulled their annual report off the website. And their global site initiative network, which they call it, Seva, has grown to over 90 hospitals in Nepal, India, Guatemala, Peru, and Tanzania. In 2016, they provided almost 900,000 people with eye screenings and exams. They restored sight through 63,000 cataract surgeries. They provided 32,000 with sight-saving medicine, 38,000 with eyeglasses, and trained over 4,000 doctors, nurses, and volunteers. A small group with the intent of compassion and action. It's just an amazing thing. The Tao Te Ching asks us, do you have the patience to wait till the mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself? Good question. So it asks us to think about where we all are in Seva, whether it's here or in the community, whether it's regionally, nationally, internationally. You know, one of the areas that comes to mind a lot for me is the homeless situation. It's everywhere, and in Reading, it's in the news consistently. And it's a thing that's really difficult to resolve, really difficult. But if you spent any time with Shirley McQuiston, Shirley and her husband are in the kitchen every Sunday making wonderful things for us, you know she's very passionate about dogs. I get all these wonderful Facebook videos from her about people saving dogs, loving dogs, caring for dogs. She asked me a couple weeks ago, I'm really worried about the dogs that are with the homeless because they're companions to them. But they probably don't get shots. Who knows how often they get fed? Can we do something to help feed the dogs? I thought, wow, that's an interesting idea. Because when I was working at the Hope Van, when we would deliver food, and I brought shoes, I would notice that about 10 to 15% of all the homeless people that came, had dogs. And they were loving companions. And I think safety for them, helped protect them, because there's a lot of unkind things that are done between the homeless. And so when she asked me that question, I thought, I'm going to Google it. I always go to Google. Google knows everything. And you won't believe what I found. A nonprofit group called Feeding Pets of the Homeless. Now, isn't that just so cool? It's a national organization that operates in 26 states out of Carson City, Nevada. It began in 2008, and they right now have 453 donation sites that collect pet food across the country. Now, they don't invite the homeless there to pick it up. The food is delivered to where the homeless go for services, to the food banks, to the mission, to various places. That's where the food goes. But through monetary donations, they have veterinarians around the country who will donate their services at a discount, and they have wellness programs once a year where the homeless can bring their animals and get them shots and get checkups and take care of fleas and whatever else that they need taken care of. And so I ran this idea past our board and some of our leadership, and they went, wow, that's a really great idea. It may not be a great idea for people who don't like dogs, but most of the people thought, well, that was a really cool idea. And so we're going to support it, and I've got a whole packet of information here, and we're going to get it organized, and we'll let you know how it goes. We'll probably have another bin that you can put dog food in and a place to donate, because it's important that these homeless dogs get their shots and get dewormed and all that. So this organization, I emailed them and they said, fantastic, we'll be in touch with you. We will give you press releases. We will give you public service announcements. We will send out monthly newsletters to everyone that's participating, because this is a big national organization and we want to support you. They will even call the local radio stations and talk to them. So this is a real legit organization. I'm just very excited. When I told Shirley this morning, she danced down the hallway. So with all that compassion and action that is happening around here, I think Ernest Holmes would be very pleased, and so would Maharaji and Ram Dass and even Steve Jobs. I think they would see that we're doing all this from a sense of seva, a sense of selfless service, and with love. And if you didn't know, our parent organization, Centers for Spiritual Living in Golden, Colorado, a big part of their effort that we support is global services. They reach out to centers that have started in countries all over the world. They are now translating many of our books into Spanish and other languages. So our contribution to them supports global services. Whenever I take baskets of shoes over to Living Hope Ministry, Billy Joe's the office manager there, and she comes out and she says, do you know how much I love you? And I go, Billy Joe, I love you too, and everyone that you serve. I'm about to tear up from that. She says it every time. It shouldn't make me so emotional. But it doesn't get better than that. When all the people that they serve, homeless and the very, very poor, are so excited to get your shoes. So excited to get your shoes. And last winter, Barbara Bella and her neighbor knitted those scarves and hats, and Billy Joe put them in a cupboard, and everyone that came in, she says, are you homeless? And they would say, yes. She said, well, here. And she'd try to match the scarf with their coat. And, it's just so sweet to see that. And I know you're working on this again, aren't you? Knitting every day. So if you aren't on a Seva team, I really encourage you to join one. The brochures are on the board table. Please take one. As you'll see, there's many areas that would appreciate your help. I'd like to close with a few words from Meister Eckhart, and I thought, I didn't expect this to come from him, so. He says, if I were alone in a desert and feeling afraid, I would want a child to be with me. For then my fear would disappear and I would be made strong. This is what life in itself can do, because life is so noble, so full of pleasure and so full of power. But if I could not have a child with me, I would like to have at least an animal at my side to comfort me. Therefore, let those who bring about wonderful things in their big dark books take an animal to help them. The life within the animal will give them strength in turn, for equality gives them strength in all things and in all times. And so it is.